Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V, and when I first moved into this house about 17, 18 years ago, I planted 3 dwarf fruit trees, none of which were supposed to grow over 4 foot tall. Now, I don't know if you can see in the background my garden there. They got a bit higher than 4 foot tall. They're about 40 feet tall now, and they've created a massive thicket of fruit trees in my garden. And so this year I had a lot of extra fruit, and I decided that we couldn't possibly eat it all, especially as my kids had gone off plums and gone off apples, and they don't really like blackberries anymore. And so I needed to do something with all of this fruit so that I didn't waste it. And I decided that actually this could be a really good gift to give all of my alcohol drinking friends for Christmas. And so I decided to make fruit infused gin with them. It was so ridiculously easy that I'm going to show you how to do it today. So I got these baskets of plums, and of course my kids have decided that they don't like plums anymore, so I chopped them in half, stuck them in the freezer with the stones still in, stabbed them first, measured out my sugar. I will stick the actual recipe in the description for you so you can see the quantities and stuff. And I also bought this massive bottle of gin from Aldi. The woman must have thought that I was a right alky because that was all I bought, but it was only about 15 quid and it's a dupe for Gordon's. And then I boiled my jars. Then I realised that I shouldn't have done that with the jars having a rubber seal on, so I had to take them out and do them in Milton. But I boiled all the jars so that they would be sterilised before we started. I am reusing coffee jars because they're airtight. You can give them a good shake. So then all you have to do is stick your fruit in the jars, and I did it in little layers. So I put a few in, as you can see here, and then I tipped a little bit of my sugar in, and then I put a few more in and tipped a bit more of my sugar in. So that was layering fruit and sugar until it was basically at the top of the jar. Now, you do need to leave a little bit of space in your jar so that you've got room to shake everything together. But aside from that, I mostly filled the jars up here. As you can see, I'm sticking them in with the peel on and the stones in and all that sort of stuff. The only stuff that I took off was the leaves, and I gave them a good clean, stabbed them and stuck them in the freezer. You can see some of the bits where it got stabbed there. That's just to help the juices come out more easily. So once I'd got all my fruit and sugars layered up in the jar, I just started pouring my gin in until I topped them all up. And how pretty does that look with the fruit in there and the gin and the sugar? It's so cute. Then you give them a good shake and you leave them in the cupboard for about 4 weeks. Give them a good shake every now and then, and eventually they have this gorgeous red colour. In the meantime, I started preparing my bottles. You see how I've got these little potion bottles? I found these on Amazon. They actually hold a surprising amount of liquid. And my idea was to put the gin in there with some sort of potion label bottles and maybe put some dangly little charms on there so that I can give this away as Christmas presents. And I'm actually really pleased with how they turned out. I had to make sure that the cork lids were nice and tight, and they were, because if they're not tight enough, then your alcohol's going to start evaporating off, and by the time Christmas comes, you're just going to have empty bottles. I made these little labels for them. I've got my confidence elixir, truth serum, temporary love potion, and sleeping draught on there. And then I decided to put a different shaped charm on each different type of gin so that all of the recipients, even if they can't read the labels, will be able to tell the difference between the different flavours. I made these with just a roll of stickers, labels that I got off Amazon again, and did it with fountain pen. After about 4 weeks, it was ready for straining. It looks kind of jammy here, doesn't it? I lined a sieve with some clean muslin cloths, and I just started pushing the gloop through the sieve and the cloth into a big jug below. It took quite a while to go through. It looked kind of thick and jammy, and I thought, oh no, have I done something wrong? But actually, when it came out, the liquid was really clear because it had taken so long to strain through. So at the moment, it kind of looks like stewed plums and strawberry jam. It doesn't look particularly appetizing, but all we needed was the juice, not the fruits. And so I pushed them through with the back of a spoon. I kept agitating until they went through. And then eventually I picked up the cloth and started to squeeze the juice out of it. By the end of it, I had a lovely amount of this beautiful, bright red, clear liquid. There was no cloudiness to it whatsoever, so I decided that just the one strain was probably enough. Popped it into the bottle, and it looks amazing. I was really pleased with that. But as you may be able to see in the background, Plums were not the only fruit that I had a glut of this year. We also had an absolute ton of apples and quite a lot of blackberries as well. And so I decided we needed to do the same with this. Apple and blackberry gin sounds really, really good to me. So I chopped up my apples, but then I accidentally lost all the footage of me putting the blackberries in there. But here you can see I got another bottle of that gin. I'm dividing it equally between my fruit and my sugar. And I did exactly what I did with the plums. Just put layers of fruit in with layers of sugar in between. And then I made sure that I had enough gin to cover all the fruit at the end. The sugar quantities were ever so slightly different for this one. So again, I will put the recipe for that in the description. But once again, I just think that the jars look so, so beautiful when they're all full of the fruit and the sugar. Something about it just looks really, really Christmassy. But of course, it doesn't stay like that. This one took only about 2 weeks to fully steep in, and in that time it went from this gorgeous clear colour to this bright red. I really, really liked that. We gave it a shake every day-ish for the 2 weeks until all the sugar was gone, and then it does look gorgeous, although the fruit does not look the best at this point. It is still actually perfectly edible, and if you wanted to save your alcohol-soaked fruits for a boozy sort of Christmas pudding, you can absolutely do that. The only reason that I haven't is because none of my family like that sort of thing. Now, because blackberries have much smaller pips than everything else, I am going to try and do it through a double layer of muslin cloth, but this time I forgoed the sieve and decided that just the muslin cloth on top of the jug was enough. And it turned out I was actually right about that. I thought if I'm wrong about that, I can always sieve it again. But the 2 layers of muslin cloth over the jar was absolutely fine. I made sure that I had my bottles ready because I had a couple of potion bottles left that I hadn't had enough plum gin to fill. Although I actually do have another bag of plums in the freezer, and I might make even more before Christmas because there is still plenty of time. So come on in, I'll show you how we do it. Excuse my belly there. So I gave it one last little shake, and then I remembered I hadn't tasted it yet. So I gave it a good sniff, and I took a little teaspoon of it because it was still quite early in the morning. We don't want to start the gin too early in the day. But it was absolutely gorgeous. It tasted like bottled autumn. It reminded me of frosty mornings and crisp autumn leaves and comfort food. And so I was really, really pleased with how this one came out. Now, if you like it, you could have added in a cinnamon stick or bay leaf or something like that during the fermenting process on this one. I didn't, just because one of the recipients really, really doesn't like cinnamon, but I actually think that putting a cinnamon stick in it would have made it a little bit more sort of Christmassy. But as it is, it just tasted purely of fruit, and it did taste like bottled autumn. I was very, very pleased with that. So I was slowly pouring my liquids through, and I accidentally poured far too much of the fruit through, but that's okay. We just gather up the corners of the muslin cloth like that and give it a real good squeeze to get as much juice as we possibly can out of those fruits. And it actually ended up producing quite a lot more liquid than I originally thought it would. I thought I would be able to produce, a litre, because that's how much of gin that I put in. But we ended up with far more than a litre of liquid at the end of it. Now, I am told that adding fruit and fruit juice to the gin doesn't actually change the alcohol content. So on the label, I've put the alcohol content that was on the gin, but I feel it must do something to the alcohol content, whether it waters it down because you've got more fruit juices in it or increases it because the fruit's been fermenting. I'm not quite sure. There isn't like yeast or anything in this. It's not like I'm making a beer or a cider. And so in theory, the fruit shouldn't really ferment too much. It should just seep all the flavour into the gin. People that understand this better than me tell me that the alcohol content stays the same. Now, these cloths are reusable. You can just chuck them in the washing machine when you're finished. Do them on a hot washer if you want to sterilise them for straining more fruit things. I got a little funnel and started pouring into the bottles. And I have to say, this came out so much better than I expected it to. It does look really, really potion-y because it's red. And I maybe would have expected the blackberry to make it more purple. I think maybe it would have if I'd done it just pure blackberry instead of apple and blackberry. Once I've yammed the cork on really, really hard to make sure that none of this evaporated, that one was just about ready. And of course, I still had loads and loads of gin left, but only one of the little bottles. So I poured what was left into that bottle, forgetting my funnel for a second before I realised I really didn't want to spill gin all over my kitchen. And then I started to strain the rest out, just so that I could top that bottle up to full. But after that, I had run out of potion bottles, and so I decided to put my finished apple and blackberry gin back into the gin bottle that I had used to make it with, because I know that that is obviously a firm screw top that's not going to let the alcohol sort of evaporate off, and it's dark green as well, and so you do want to keep this in a dark place like a cupboard or something like that, and to stop the light from degenerating it a little bit. Like, you want to keep it in a cool dark place, and so having a dark green bottle probably helps to preserve it a little bit as well. But yeah, I ended up with a lot more gin than I expected. That's the full bottle there, plus I got another 2 of these bottles out of that 1 bottle of gin, so I don't quite understand how that happened. I could have made this fruit into Christmas cake, but I dumped it because no one in my house likes it, and here it is with the finished charm on. Apparently it's good for up to a year. So as you see, that was a super easy way to make a gift that kind of looks sort of fancy, and maybe people will be a bit impressed that you made it yourself, even though literally it's just chucking fruit and alcohol in jars and shaking it a bit until it looks done. Couldn't be easier, really. But I'm very, very pleased with how it turned out, and I really hope that the recipients are going to like them as well, and also that they didn't watch this video in advance and work out that they were one of the people that I was going to give it to. Join me on Monday for my next vlog, where I'm actually going to be appearing on a friend's podcast, and so I'm going to show you a few highlights of that so that you'll be able to go and check out their pod if you like it. But if you can't wait until then to see me again, I understand. I will be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath, letting you know what I'm grateful for. Sometimes I'm letting you know what's challenging me that day, and I have been right whingy this week about my lack of sleep, but I'm hoping that that is going to change next week. So like and subscribe, or don't, I'm not your mum, and either way, you have yourself a magical week.